So always get excited.
Yeah. This other veteran radio presenter na kutse tla dira radio na ko itele re manyapi bana re fa buisa le re mo happy ba re ntate mo happy ba re ntate mo happy re tla dula re thabile ka na ko tso jalo Mr. Happy fa le fa manta re tla re itse
always our soul is being fed.
Oh man.
You great, Mr. Happy?
No, I'm excellent, guys. Thank you so much.
Mr. Happy go dumedisa re go amogela ka kwano mo thulaganyong ya rena ya Youth Connect manta ga mongwe le mongwe re tle re ithuti dilo tse dintse go tswa mo Mr. Happy me go mbele ga re tla ga tswelela ka the series re tshwereng ka kwano re tshwere ntlha e thata khitse ya ke me we dira bonolo Mr. Happy
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Mr. Happy, once again, good afternoon. Re nna go dumedisa le moretsi wa Kurara FM.
Ke dumedisa baretsi botlhe ba Kurara FM. Thank you so much for having me.
Ile young weekend Mr. Happy?
It was great. It was really awesome. Quite a relaxed moment.
Yeah.
It's getting colder.
Yeah, I think it's good that it gets colder because it actually, when it gets colder, people stay indoors a bit longer.
Thank you.
Which is good because it allows you to spend time with yourself, which is what we don't do. So summer can really rob us of an opportunity to, because in summer when you are home, you itch. You just want to be out there all the time.
In the cold.
So winter is good because it allows you to sit, connect, to self and to the people in the house.
You see why we love Mr. Happy?
No,
he already took take the platform to address it.
Yeah.
All at once.
Yeah, no. Mr. Happy re go solo dumedisa le moretsi wa Kurara FM.
Ke dumedisa baretsi botlhe ba Kurara FM. Thanks for having me once more. I hope the young ones, they keep coming to sit and listen because the main aim behind this show is to actually help the younger generation so that we share our insights, we share what we know and what we have seen so they can grow better and make better decisions than we did. So I'm hoping that the young ones are actually listening because this is for them. Yeah.
Mothers, you're about to get your life into perspective. It's Monday Motivation with Mr. Tepo Mohapi. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We spoke last week about the law of investment, and we called it the law of investment and return. And I think one of the critical things that we had said was that, if you look at things, and I love, this is one of the reasons why I call the page Life in Perspective, is because I look at things with perspective. I always ask myself a question: why was this actually created? How do we benefit from it as humans? Because one thing that I've noticed, and just looking at law of investment, I read recent a comment from Elon Musk where he was saying he's not an entrepreneur because he wants money or he loves money, but he says he's an entrepreneur because it allows him to sometimes decide that he's gonna stop or cancel every plan in his day and actually focus on his children. It gives him the flexibility to decide what he wants to do, when and how. And for him doing that, imagine him he's not even focusing. When we look at Elon Musk, what do we see? Money, power. He doesn't even see that stuff. All he sees is, I have flexibility for my time. You see what rich people value. And sometimes we value the things that they look at and say, but that thing is not important, it will come. And you realize that the key to actually growing and becoming a strong person is not looking at the ultimate outcome to say, I want to be in the Forbes status. It's not looking at that, because if you look at that, the chances are you might not necessarily get there. But there are things you need to focus on that are actually key drivers in getting you there. So that's how the law of investment actually works. So when I saw this comment, I got really excited. I said, this actually talks to what I've been talking about, because it's exactly what I'm saying about the law of investment, to say, or you have an expected outcome of the investment. But while you are busy developing and nurturing the investment, your focus is not to say, I'm about to get there, how far am I? No, it's to focus on what you need to do. Invest. One day when you lift up your head, you will realize that you've done so much progress that it becomes, now most of the time, what discourages us, you do 5% movement, you look ahead and say, hey, 95 to go. And that in itself is like, you will only get motivated when you are now at 70 and you say, 30 to go. So it's always important to look at what you are doing. Focus on what you are doing. You will lift up your head at some point, but it's not important. But focus on what you are doing at that point in time, because that's how you actually get ahead when it comes to this. So that's I think the part of the asset that we spoke about last week and the part of the appreciation of the value. Remember, we said you put in an asset. That asset can be money. That asset can be yourself. That asset can be your time. That asset can be a lot of things that you are investing. But then you need to enter the process of growing that, which means you create appreciation, you create growth. And part of doing that has everything to do with what we mentioned last week, to say you need to focus on several key things that drive your investment. But now what I want to highlight as well, which I believe is very important, which touches the issue of the winter that we have just touched on now, to say it's called people spend more time at home, is that a lot of people do not know how to invest in themselves because they do not know themselves well enough.
Yo!
Sure.
Wow.
There are a lot of people, I gave an example the last time when I went to school, university.
Yes, sir.
I got university entrance, everything. I wasted 2 years before I actually did what I love. Because at that time, truth be told, I was not ready to make up my mind what is it that I wanted to do as a career.
Sure.
And that wasted 2 years of my time. What am I trying to say? I invested in things that maybe I'm using 5% of what I've learned there. It's not as useful to me as what I then later did in the later years. Now, what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you invest your energy and time in things that might not, in the future, might not benefit you as well as you wanted them to.
Yo.
So I did medical sciences. How is medical science helping me right now? Yeah, maybe it's helping me with the understanding of biology and how medicine works and whatnot. Because the entry level, when you do your first year, that's what they teach you. So yeah, maybe I have an understanding when someone talks about certain medicines and, the basics. But it's not something that I can use to drive my life. I did computer programming and robotics, which is another one where I wasted another year. Now, the question is, where is it helping me now? Yeah, I understand computers, I understand programming and all these other things, but it's not something that I use 90% of the time in my life. No, I use it less than 5%. So it's not as useful. So I've invested a year in each of these things that I'm using less than 5% of them. Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, okay, so how am I investing in myself? What is it that I need to do for me to know how to invest in myself? Yes, we talk about investment to say investment and return. The question you need to ask yourself is, how do I invest in myself? How do I know how to invest in myself? That has everything to do with you knowing yourself. Now, I'll give you a simple example. Just a proof that as people, we don't spend time discovering self. If I give you a piece of paper now and say, write 40 good things about yourself, you know how long it's going to take you to do that?
Sure.
Just 40.
Just 40. Even if I say 5. Some people 5. If I say 40 now, you might find that after an hour, you've only done 7. You are still trying to figure out. Because at that time, it's only then you are affording your brain the opportunity to reflect. Because many a times we never afford our mind to do that. We never look into self. We are so good at looking outside ourselves. But we have not trained ourselves to look into ourselves. Because looking into ourselves actually has a lot more value than looking out.
Absolutely.
That is why you will find that even some of the wisest people will tell you words like, don't stick your nose where it does not belong.
Sure.
Those words are words that actually carry a lot of wisdom. Because what it shows you is that you should not know more about your outside world than you know about your internal world. What is happening in your internal world? If I say to you, what makes you happy? And you are not even sure. You are thinking, if I eat Nando's, I am happy. You are not even sure what makes you happy. You are still trying to figure out. That is why a lot of people, some of them realize while they are in the middle of what they thought would make them happy to say, man, I don't think I'm as happy as I thought I would be if I did this thing. It does not make me. How many people thought you look at a lady or a guy looks at a lady or a lady looks at a guy and say, this one can make me very happy. And only to realize when you are with that person and say, man, they are busy right now with forever here now. Until you get to a point where you realize, man, because your definition, and it has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. Your definition of what you thought would make you happy is now all of a sudden turned around. And you are thinking, oh, I thought this would read. Now, because you only looked at yourself from the surface, you didn't go as deep as you can. This is what is important about reflecting. Self-introspection. Take the time to sit and self-introspect so that you will know what are the things that will actually create value in your life.
Wow.
What is it that will create value in your life? Have you noticed that some people will think, I'm a writer. I love writing. I love until they start writing and they realize
Okay.
you will never know how much you love something until you start doing it.
Sure.
True.
I always tell people, how many people sit at home and they say they love God? I love God. I love God with all my heart. And you say, come to church for just 4 Sundays in that month. Just for on Sunday number 2, they're like, but you were telling me you love God.
Yeah.
When you love a person, don't you want to be...
Sacrificing.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And this becomes important because now when you begin to learn to know yourself better and you begin to understand yourself better, you are now in a position where you are able to know, even when you sacrifice, it's so nice to sacrifice when you know why you are sacrificing. And you are convinced by the reason behind why you are sacrificing. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
I was even saying the last time you asked me a question, how do you get over a breakup? How do you get over a breakup? You get over a breakup, well, unless when you broke up, you didn't actually think properly.
Yeah.
But prior to you breaking up, you need to think
Sure.
and make sure that the reasons that are making you leave are reasons that have to do with your values.
Yeah. There you go.
Reasons that have to do with your values. Why? Because you understand yourself so well that you know that even if I were to force this thing, it will keep jumping out. I will try to push it in, it will jump out. It does not matter how hard I try, it will keep jumping out. Why? Because it is not aligned to my values. I can love you so much that I can hang on a tree for you. You hearing what I'm saying? But let me tell you something. If my values are not aligned with your values, there will always be a clash.
Sure.
Qualities.
Sure.
There will always be a clash. Now, how do you get to a point where you know what your true values are? And just before I close this law, I'm going to touch on what are values. What is it that if you say something is your value, what is it? There are a lot of people you will see, and I was actually quite shocked the other time when I read on social media people talking about love languages. You know, when Gary Chapman, the guy that innovated this love language story, when he wrote the book and he was specific how he categorized love languages. Today, people will tell you, they'll go shopping and they say, my love language.
Yeah, gift.
And
Roses.
yeah, and sometimes it's out of context because that's not a love language. It's a
Demand.
yeah, it's a want.
Sure.
It's a want. It's something that you feel you want to have in your life all the time, but it's not necessarily a love. So you see how definitions then become very critical, which is what I was saying even last week, to say, before you start talking about something, define it.
Sure.
Have a point of reference so that when you conversate around it, you give us a better understanding of what this thing actually really means. Now, what I'm trying to say is that you need to then get into a space where you look into yourself and you do self-introspection. You have a better understanding of who you are so that you know what your values are. Then the sacrifice becomes easier. Sometimes it's better to love a person from far.
Sure.
And let me talk relationships now.
Sir. Yes, sir.
It's better to love now. If you're going to invest in a relationship, sometimes some people are better off loving them from far.
Sure.
And you will love them and love them so dearly. And you say, even if you were to say, if I were to date that one, we would be so happy.
Yeah.
But don't do it. Don't do it unless you have figured out what the values of that person is.
Perfect.
Which is why some people, I always tell people, I say, it's so important that you will have that talking stage before even a relationship starts. Talk. Find out what this person is thinking, how they are thinking.
Yes, sir.
Because think about it this way. If you are dating to get married, that means that brain you are trying to convince to date you is the same brain that's going to raise your children.
Sure.
Yo.
So if that brain is not the right kind of brain,
Yeah.
you are potentially going to create a problem for yourself. Because that brain is going to be a problem for you. You are going to have children with that brain, that the children themselves will become a product of the same brain, which will be problems to you. Which means you will live your life solving problems from one generation to another. Imagine 2 generations. It's even worse when they have grandchildren and they have the same brain of their grandmother and their mother. Ay, Mudim. you will feel like you want to die. You will feel like I am tired. I want to check out. And that is why you will see that a lot of people have very, very thin tolerance levels. They don't have the tolerance level because they end up feeling like, I can't take this anymore. I just can't handle it anymore. Because we have not looked at the value of looking into self before you then say, I need to invest. Look into yourself and make sure that you need to invest. It does not matter whether you buy a car. Even before you buy a car, look into yourself and check. Do you actually really need this?
Perfect. I love
Do you actually really need this? And if you don't need it, it's not a worthwhile investment. The law of investment teaches you on how to determine the things you could do now and the things you want to do later. You see, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time now because there is a test that I want to discuss. I'll probably touch on it next week.
Okay.
And that test is called the marshmallow test.
Marshmallow test.
So what they did is in Stanford, the university, they did research where they took children,
Yes, sir.
which were between 3 and 6 years old. Was it 3 and 6? Somewhere there, 3 and 6. And they took them they would take each of them in a room and they would put a marshmallow in a saucer. And they would say to them, you can eat the marshmallow, it's yours. But if you choose to wait and not eat the marshmallow, when I come back, I will give you another marshmallow, then you can enjoy both of them.
Okay.
Ane?
Yeah.
So the purpose behind the test was to first check if the children have the ability to,
To control themselves.
not necessarily to control, but to sacrifice
Okay.
temporary happiness
Sure.
for future bigger happiness.
Wow.
Wow.
Are you able to postpone pleasure now to say, I can have pleasure now, but let me hold this pleasure and wait for a time where I can enjoy that, which is the same thing I was saying. People going on holiday now when you are on a tight budget, as opposed to waiting until you are comfortable and going on holiday, coming back with cash still in the bank. Are you with me? So now these kids, some of them would eat the marshmallow. Some of them would, chew it a little bit. Some would smell it. Some would lick it. They would try ways of postponing so that there's more time. And you find that as human behavior with a lot of people. And that's why I was saying the concept of sacrifice to a lot of us is a very difficult concept. But it has everything to do with what I said, which was the third point, the maturity period. The maturity period. Now, I'm going to talk more on this law and break it up nicely so that you'll understand what happened. But the outcome, let me now just mention, there are some kids that managed and they were frustrated. When they showed the video of those kids, you will see the kid is frustrated. They're pulling their hair. They're thinking, I can enjoy this thing, but I can't because I want to. I know when I get... And I know one of them in particular managed to stay till the end.
Wow.
And when this child managed to stay till the end and they brought the other marshmallow and they say both of... You know what that kid did? He threw both of them in the mouth at the same time. To say, finally, I am there. To show you that I've been wanting to get there. Now, what I'm trying to say now is that there are certain things as a person, because you understand maturity, that every investment requires a maturity period. You will postpone happiness to say, I have 100,000 right now. I can go shopping and blow it and do this. But if I invest this money for the next 3 to 4 years, this money will multiply. I might be able to get 250 back. And then you say, instead of me eating the 100, I will invest the 100 and wait for 250 in 3 years. I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
I will survive.
Yes, sir.
You get what I'm trying to say? Now, what they also did then later on is 20 years later, when these kids are now 25, 26, 23, and so forth, they went and looked and investigated to see.
Okay.
And they realized that the kids that managed to postpone are actually doing better in life.
Sure. What a study.
They're doing better in life than the kids that did not manage to postpone.
What a study.
Now, do you realize how your mind plays a very critical role in where you end up as a person? Now, the question is, did the ones that are doing better get better opportunities? Yes, they did, because of the way they think.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah. Nice.
This is why there is an interview system for every person that takes a job.
Yeah.
The reason why there's an interview system, it's not necessarily to just determine your capabilities to do the work. Because, whether you are qualified or not, there's a piece of paper that says that you are. And your experience, because of what you have in the CV, also says you've done this thing for long. The reason behind the interview is not what is in the CV. The reason behind the interview is to determine what's in here. To say, yes, you are qualified. You have the experience. But how do you think as a person? Are you the type of thinker we can have in this type of business? You see how that plays a critical role? Because as a person, what you have in your mind is what ultimately decides. Now, when you have that attitude that says every investment has a maturity period, and I need to stay and stand until that maturity period, when the return comes, which is the fourth leg, you are able to enjoy the return fully, like that child who took both marshmallow, and no one could argue with him at that point in time because it has matured. How you eat it when it has matured, it has nothing to do with anyone. That is your choice. Are you with me? And that's what I was saying. That's why even the last time when I used an example of my boy, you know, in as much as I used it negatively the last time, you know, when I read this law, I also said, he practiced. He did practice, he did this, and he did that, and he went to school and he did well. They gave him 5 lollipops because he did very well. Now, him enjoying them was now him getting the return. So we can't necessarily use it against him. But the fact that he now got to a point where now he can enjoy the return, because he was working. He was working the day before. He was practicing. He said, Daddy, please, let's do it again. Daddy, please. I was even also getting to say, my boy, I think you are really good. He says, please, one more time, Daddy, please, one more time. Now, what I'm trying to say is that when you are investing as a person, you focus on the investment. You do it as much as you can. You continue and consistently do it as much as you can. And I promise you that return will yield results that you never, ever actually thought that you could get as a person. And the people that will learn today to invest in themselves, the investment, let me put it this way, investment is the art of using sacrifice to generate value. I'm not using the dictionary description now. I could have given you that one. Now I'm giving you my description of investment. Investment is the art of using sacrifice to generate growth in value.
Wow.
You can generate growth in value. You can generate so much value in yourself as a person. You know, this Sunday I was at church and I loved the session so much because it was talking to these things. And the pastor touched on the fact that you need to have advisors that are more wiser than you. But also you might have advisors that are your age group. But if you have advisors that are your age group, make sure that they know better than you.
Wow, okay.
Like really, if you are a person who's investing in yourself, you can't be advised by everyone.
You truly want to grow.
Like you need to be that selfish about yourself. Like you can't have everyone just telling you stuff. You owe it to yourself. It's one of those things that you need to owe to yourself to say, I need to be able to know who is trying to put something in me because I need to make sure that that person has actually the right to do so. The problem is that we listen to faceless motivation out there. We listen to faceless information where a person, you just only know their handle. You don't know who they are. You have not gone back. You can't even find them on Google. There's no background. There's nothing. That is why, you know, if I'm doing this now and I'm putting myself out there, there needs to be some form of profile that people can read and say, who is this guy? You know, I've had so many people even on TikTok. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Yeah, and some of them, when you answer them, you just send them a link to say, go and read.
Direct them.
You understand what I'm saying? Because what you are saying is that I did not just come here, I landed like I fell from a tree. I came here because there's a series of things I've accumulated over time, and I have something of value to give to you.
I'm happy.
You understand what I'm saying? Now, even with you, amongst your peers, you need to come across as a person that knows how to speak to them, and they would say, you are wiser than them. But how do you get to that point? By creating so much value around yourself that even your peers will find you valuable enough to advise them. And that's why you get to a point where you will even realize that even age is not a measure of wisdom.
True.
You know, in the past, they used to say gray hair is a representation of wisdom. There's even idioms in the African culture or in the amongst the African people that talk to the fact that wisdom, you know, is seen in the gray hair of a man. And the unfortunate part is that nowadays that cannot be comparable anymore. Because you will find a person that's gray, and all they are feeding from is things that don't actually even have any value because they have not taken the time to take themselves serious enough to evaluate the type of investment that must come into them. What am I trying to say to you today as I close? It is very, very important for you to learn. There are 3 things you need to understand about yourself when you do that introspection. The first one is identity. Who are you? Who are you? What is your identity? Now, I'll show you this in 2 ways.
Yes, sir.
The first way is that even in church, how we teach people about who they are. In fact, when you come to church, one of the first things we teach you when you get to church is who are you?
Identity.
We give you identity in Christ and we say, this is your identity in Christ. Because this is one of the key, most critical things ever.
Okay.
When you are born in your family, what is the first thing that they do? They give you a name.
Yes.
What that name is meant to do is to describe you.
Identity.
That's why when parents are naming their children, don't just name a child any name random. I don't want to mention name because people might hate me. Don't give names randomly.
Yeah.
Give a name because to some extent you have an understanding of what the purpose of that child is. It's important to give that child identity. That's why after the name comes the surname, which talks about where you come from.
Yo.
Identity, very important.
Yes,
The
sir.
second one is purpose. What is your purpose in life? What is your purpose in life?
Nice.
And when you understand your purpose in life and know that is what I am here to do. And let me tell you, purpose is supposed to be bigger than you. Purpose is not selfish. Purpose is not self-serving. Purpose looks beyond yourself. The last one, which is the least important one, is your needs.
Nice. Okay.
The needs are the last things you must think about. It's not the first thing you put ahead.
Yeah.
But today we are trained to do what? Put happiness,
Other way around.
put what? But now enjoyment.
Yeah, man, enjoy it. Yo,
But
yo,
if you have money and it does not fix your problem, eat the money.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.